At my high school graduation, my mom didn't clap. My brother didn't even stand. And my dad? He got up and left halfway through my valedictorian speech to take a call. They didn't think I earned it. They thought I cheated. Because a girl like me, one who fought, who got expelled, who came home with bruises and never talked about it, couldn't possibly be smart enough to stand on that stage without cutting corners. They always made it clear. I was the failure, the screw-up, the one who ruined family photos just by being in them. My brothers? One's a lawyer, the other, an engineer. I was the disappointment wrapped in military nonsense and silence. That morning, just before the ceremony, my mom leaned in and whispered, "Don't embarrass us today." So when I stepped off that stage, diploma in hand, I didn't expect applause. I didn't expect pride. I didn't expect anything. And then we heard it. This thunder overhead. A Black Hawk helicopter, low over the football field. Everyone looked up. The side door opened midair, and a man in uniform dropped down on a fast rope, landing like a phantom out of nowhere. He walked right through the stunned crowd, stopped in front of me, and saluted. "Commander Logan," he said, loud and clear, "your mission awaits." The whole town froze. My dad's face went pale. My mom's lips parted, but no sound came out. And I didn't look back. I climbed into that chopper with everything I had left. But let me tell you something. Getting there wasn't easy. And what came after? It was harder. Because you don't become a Navy SEAL just by being born tough. You become one when the world tries to break you, and you stand up anyway. My name is Logan Ray, and this is the story they never believed I'd survive. Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If any part of this hits home, consider following the channel. It means more than you know. Now, let me tell you everything. The wrench slipped in my hand. Not much. Just enough to slice the edge of my thumb. Blood welled up immediately, but I barely noticed. My hands were already black with grease, my arms shaking from the weight of the old engine block I'd been wrestling since morning. "Hey, Miss Navy!" someone shouted from behind me. I didn't have to turn. I knew the voice. A customer leaned against the hood of his busted pickup, grinning. "What? They didn't teach torque specs at the academy?" I wiped the blood off with the back of my wrist and kept working. That nickname, Miss Navy, it wasn't a compliment. Not in Willow Falls. It was a slap, a reminder. 10 years ago, I was discharged from the U.S. Naval Academy. Not honorably, not with medals or celebration. I punched a superior officer in the face because he assaulted my bunkmate. I stood by it then. I stand by it now. But the Navy didn't. Neither did my family. I lived in a room above Hank's auto shop now. Tiny, cramped, smelling like burnt oil and loneliness. Every morning, I looked out over the same sleepy river town I grew up in, but I felt like a ghost, squatting in someone else's life. People here didn't ignore me, they remembered me, and they never let me forget. That day was my brother Noah's high school graduation. He was the golden boy, track star, scholarship winner, future engineer, the second chance my family had prayed for. Over breakfast once, my mom had actually said, "Noah's the redemption this family needed. Not everyone ruins everything, Logan." I wasn't invited to his ceremony. I showed up anyway. I sat alone, way up in the metal bleachers, wrapped in a navy jacket nobody had touched in years. I watched him walk across the stage, saw my mom's pride swelling in the front row. I didn't envy him. I just didn't belong. And then I heard it. That deep, rhythmic thrum in the sky. The crowd looked up. Dust kicked up like a storm as the UH-60 Black Hawk descended, rotor blades hammering the sky into thunder. People screamed, ducked, covered their kids. The helicopter hovered, then slowly dropped beside the podium. The side door swung open. A man in black stepped out. Sunglasses. Bulletproof vest under a crisp suit. He pulled a sheet of paper from a folder, scanned the crowd, and his voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Commander Logan Ray," he called out, Seal designation. Your mission starts now. The whole field went silent. My mother dropped the bouquet of white roses she was holding for Noah. Noah turned, locking eyes with me across a sea of stunned faces. I hadn't known Reed was going to do it like this. Hadn't expected my old world to crash into this one so loud, so public. Every whisper I'd endured in town, every sneer at the auto shop, every night wondering if I made the right call. All of it burned away. I wasn't invisible anymore, but I was exposed. My mom pulled me behind the bleachers. Her grip was hard. "What is this?" she hissed. "Some stunt? You had to ruin this for Noah too." I yanked my arm free. "You never asked what happened. You never asked what it cost me." She paused, just long enough for something, maybe regret, to reach her eyes. Then it vanished. "Don't make yourself a victim." Reed nodded. It was time. I stepped toward the helicopter, but before I climbed in, I looked back one last time. Noah was still staring, mouth slightly open, like he was trying to reconcile the sister he grew up with and the woman walking into a war no one else could see. As the chopper lifted, the failure, the disgrace, the screw-up, I left her behind. The helicopter roared over the Oregon skyline, trees whipping by like brush strokes. Across from me sat Reed, calm, unreadable, same as he'd been the day I walked away from the SEALs 3 years ago. Between his boots sat a plain black duffel bag. He reached inside and pulled out something I never thought I'd see again. My old SEAL cap. Folded, pressed, like it had been waiting for me. "We've got a situation," he said, flipping open a laptop. The screen glowed with maps, images, intel feeds. A mobile EMP unit was stolen from a classified testing site in the south. Portable, quiet, and deadly. It's designed to take out a power grid without a trace. He tapped on the screen again, zooming into satellite footage. It's been routed through Willow Falls. One of the containers is hidden in a warehouse by the old riverport. Registered under the name Hallworth Freight. My throat went dry. Hallworth Freight. That was Emma Hallworth's family. She used to make lemon bars for bake sales. Her dad coached JV football. They sent casseroles when my father died. "The riverport's been shut down for years," I said. "Exactly," Reed replied. "No federal oversight, no digital tracking, no one watching." I leaned back in my seat. The SEAL in me was already clocking the angles. Weak points, blind spots, exit routes. But the other me? The bruised, beaten daughter of Evelyn Ray? She felt nothing but dread. Willow Falls wasn't just a town. It was a wound. And now it was turning into a battlefield. "I left this life behind for a reason," I muttered. "No," Reed said. "You left the uniform. You never left the fight." Then he flipped the screen again. The next image froze my blood. A man in desert camo, standing next to a convoy, smiling. Kyle, the last teammate I lost. The man who didn't make it back because I hesitated too long on a kill order. The ghost I carried every time I tried to live like a normal person. "This network," Reed said softly. "It might be the same one that got Kyle killed." I didn't speak. I looked out the chopper window, at the vast sweep of pine forests and ghostly valleys below. "I'll do it," I said. "But no one in town knows. Not my mom. Not Noah. No one. I won't bring this war to their doorstep." Reed nodded. "We keep it quiet. But you know this won't stay hidden forever." Later that night, I sat alone in the back seat of an unmarked SUV, the hum of tires over asphalt almost soothing. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Noah, just 4 words. "You're really SEAL?" Then another one. "Mom says you made it up." I don't know what to believe. I stared at the screen until it dimmed and went black. I didn't respond. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes from living 2 lives. One you tried to leave behind, and one that never wanted you in the first place. At 2:13 a.m., Willow Falls was dead quiet. That kind of small-town silence that only belongs to places with no stoplights and too many secrets. I moved through it like breath. Black clothes, gloved hands, steps light, rhythm steady. The old fence around the riverport had rusted to dust. I could have walked through the gap, but I climbed over instead. Quiet meant survival. Always had. The gravel bit into my boots as I crept low along the shadows. Half the floodlights were blown. The warehouse sat like a steel monster under the stars, wide and silent. There it was. The container. Big. Cold. Unmarked except for a QR code and titanium-grade bolts that shimmered faintly under my thermal lens. I crept closer. The panel around the lock was warm. Active insulation. You don't wrap farm equipment in thermal shielding. You do that for high-tech weapons. I snapped a dozen photos and sent them through an encrypted channel to read. My thumb hovered over the send button, and then I heard it. A scrape, soft, not wind. Movement. I turned fast, eyes scanning. Something shifted behind a row of crates, too big to be an animal, too fluid, human. I didn't wait. Instinct took over. I melted into the dark, retraced my route, climbed the fence again without making a sound. Whoever they were, they didn't follow. Or they knew better than to try. By sunrise, I was back in town, trying to pretend I hadn't just walked through a conspiracy in my own backyard. But that's the thing about Willow Falls. It smells secrets like blood in the water. At the flower shop, the bell barely rang before my mom came out from behind the counter. Her apron was stained with lilac and soil. Her face, tight. "You were at the Hallworth docks last night." Her tone wasn't curious. It was accusing. "Margaret Hallworth saw you," she snapped. "Said you were sneaking around like a damn thief." "I'm trying to stop something bigger than you can imagine," I said calmly. She didn't budge. "You've always made everything a mess, Logan." Always. Her words weren't cruel, just tired. That hurt worse. Then I saw Noah behind the register. He must have heard everything. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. But his voice? Cold. "You're still just the same," he said. "Logan the failure." I didn't say a word. Couldn't. My fists were clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I turned and walked out before my voice cracked and gave me away. That night, I got back to my apartment late. Something was waiting. A white envelope. No name, no address. Just a black and white photo inside. It was me, standing beside the container at the docks. The angle wasn't one I'd seen. No security cam covered that spot, which meant someone had been close, watching. On the back, scrawled in thick capital letters, "Walk away, Commander, or your family will hurt worse than you ever did." I stared at it until the moon had moved across the sky. The people of Willow Falls thought they were living in peace. But peace was just paint over rot. And I had just peeled back the first layer. I couldn't sleep. The photo, the threat, the silence from Reed. It all kept me wired. But most of all, it was that movement I saw near the container. The way the shadows shifted. That wasn't just coincidence. Whoever was behind this, they'd done this before. They were trained, careful, and they were already watching me. By 3:47 a.m., I found myself parked outside my old house. The lawn was overgrown, windows dark. Mom hadn't lived there since the year after Dad died, but the bones of that house still knew me. I walked up the side path, my boots silent on cracked stone. The basement door was locked, chained even, but I knew where she kept the bolt cutters. Inside, the musty dark swallowed me whole. My flashlight swept across old boxes, photo albums, holiday decorations long forgotten. And then I found it. The trunk. Dad's. Where he kept his medals, his uniform. The parts of him Mom didn't want to look at anymore. I popped the latches and braced for dust and mothballs. But beneath the folded flag, tucked beneath the neat corners of his navy dress blues, was a sealed envelope. Yellowed with time, my name was written across it in his uneven scrawl. "To Logan, when you're ready." I opened it with shaking hands. Inside, my father's voice spilled out in ink and memory. He wrote about shipments that didn't match manifests, about strange trucks coming and going from the docks, about how George Hallworth, Emma's father, once tried to buy his silence. He mentioned photos he took, how they vanished from his locker 2 days before his fatal accident. He didn't point fingers, not directly. But he ended with one sentence that made the air in my lungs go still. "If you're reading this, It means you found what I never could. Finish it. But don't do it alone. I stood there in the dark, letter trembling in my hands, feeling like I was 13 again, hearing his voice for the first time in 20 years. My father tried to warn them. They didn't listen. Maybe now they would. The town library still kept old microfiche records, permits, disclosures, finance reports buried in dust. It took me hours hunched over plastic lenses and yellowing rolls of film. But then, I saw it. A cash influx to Haworth Freight from a shell company out of Istanbul, flagged in multiple EU investigations for terror financing. And next to that, a map, buried in the town's planning files. It highlighted new agricultural trade routes connecting Willow Falls to 5 other port towns across the country. But those towns? I knew them from SEAL briefings. Every one of them was a high-value infrastructure hub. This wasn't about one shipment. It was a blueprint. Later that afternoon, Willow Falls was alive with flags and funnel cake. The annual Founders' Day festival. In the center of it all, standing in front of the main stage, was Emma Hallworth. Pearls, red lipstick, and charisma so polished it gleamed. She was giving a speech about revitalizing the port and returning Willow Falls to its proud shipping history. I walked up just as she finished. Her eyes caught mine. Her smile didn't flinch. "Still playing soldier, Logan?" she said sweetly. "You always were a bit dramatic." I kept my voice low, but my words were sharp. "You know what's in that container, Emma. You know exactly what you're moving through that port." Her laugh was light, public, made for the crowd. "You should really talk to someone. I think the VA's just an hour east." But her pupils dilated. Her stance tightened. She was scared. And that told me everything. Before I could say more, a hand gripped my arm. "Noah." He dragged me behind a row of booths, jaw clenched. "What the hell was that?" he hissed. "You just humiliated her. Do you have any idea what you're doing to Mom?" "I'm doing what Dad couldn't," I snapped. He blinked. "What does that mean?" I handed him the letter. Let him read it. He read every word, then shoved it back at me like it was on fire. "You're dragging up ghosts to make excuses. You got kicked out of the Navy. Now you want to pretend it was all part of something noble." "It's not about me," I said. "It's about this town." "No," he said, backing away. "It's always about you. About proving you're not the disappointment we all thought you were." He left without another word. I stood there in the middle of cotton candy clouds and calliope music, surrounded by strangers, feeling more alone than I ever had overseas. And maybe that's when I realized, if I walked away now, no one would stop me. No one would even notice. But I could still see Kyle's face, hear my dad's voice, and I couldn't stay silent. Not again. I uploaded everything to read. The photos, the financial links, the maps, even the thermal scans. His reply came within the hour. A voice message. "We've had Haworth Freight flagged before," Reed said, "but we've never been able to get anything to stick. No local cooperation, no warrants, no case." Of course. That's how it always went in places like Willow Falls. Tight-lipped towns, more loyal to legacy than law. But if I couldn't catch them red-handed, maybe I could make them panic. That night, I logged into an old veterans-only forum. Posted under a burner handle I hadn't used in years. Rumors about a stolen EMP being stored in Willow Falls. A Hallworth container marked as farm equipment. No names, no direct accusations. Just enough to stir the water. I knew how these forums worked. Nothing happened out loud. But eyes saw. Whispers spread. And people like Hallworth? They feared whispers more than gunfire. 3 days later, the docks caught fire. Not the whole port, just one warehouse. The same one I'd infiltrated. The container I'd photographed? Gone, burned to ash. Cleanup crews moved in almost instantly. No press, no questions. Just fire damage and blank uniforms with no patches. Then came the knock. Sheriff Tom Branning. Beige uniform, thick arms, thinner patience. He'd taught Noah to fish. Used to drink beers with Dad on Sunday afternoons. Now he looked at me like I'd just spit on his porch. "We found your fingerprints at the scene," he said in the station. "Want to explain that?" "I was tracking stolen federal tech," I answered. He leaned in, voice low. You mean trespassing on private land and lighting a match under the whole damn town? I said nothing. He shook his head. You never change. You carry chaos with you like a second skin. Before I could answer, the door opened. Reed. He flashed his ID before anyone could question him. She's under federal authorization, he said flatly. You should be asking who set the fire, not who took pictures. Branning's face fell, just a little. She's not even active, he muttered. She's always been active, Reed said, and that was that. Outside the station, I found something stuffed into my coat pocket. I hadn't put anything there. A scrap of paper. No envelope, no pleasantries. Just one line. Next time, it won't just be a warehouse. Grease-stained. Smelled like burnt oil and gasoline. I stared at it for a long time. Then folded it, jammed it into my boot. I drove straight to Mom's. She opened the door without a word. Stepped aside like she already knew I was coming. You're bringing trouble back to our doorstep, she said quietly. No, I said. It was already here. I'm trying to stop it. You've spent your whole life trying to stop things, she said, sitting at the kitchen table. All you ever do is tear them open. I reached into my bag and pulled out the letter. My father's letter. He tried to warn someone. He tried to stop it. No one listened. Her eyes welled up. Not angry, not resentful. Just tired and scared. I think he knew the truth was bigger than him, she whispered. He just didn't want it to destroy you, too. We sat in silence after that. Didn't hug, didn't cry. Just shared the weight of a truth that had waited far too long to be spoken. That night, I got back to my apartment expecting the usual shadows. Instead, I found a USB drive on my desk. No note, no signs of forced entry. Just a plain silver stick with no markings. I didn't waste time. I plugged it into my air-gapped laptop and let it load. Grainy black and white footage filled the screen. Infrared, time-stamped 3 nights ago. A woman stepped into frame, Emma Hallworth, confident, composed. She handed a slim metal case to a man with a limp. He stepped into the light, and I froze. Victor Caney, a name I hadn't heard in years. He was a mercenary. One we'd left bleeding out in a Kandahar alley. Intel said he died in custody 2 months later. But here he was, standing on U.S. soil, alive and smiling. And Emma had just handed him something important. I rewound the footage again and again, watching every blink, every step. I sent it to Reed immediately. His reply came in seconds. Confirmed. That's Caney. He's been off-grid for 3 years. If he's in Willow, this isn't just a leak. This is a coordinated breach. I already knew that. But hearing Reed say it out loud made it real. The EMP wasn't the endgame. It was a dry run. They were testing how fast a town could fall. And they were going to try again. I needed eyes on Emma. And not just my own. That night, I launched a drone from the ridge above her estate. Silent, unmarked, programmed to follow heat signatures. It tracked her car through town, past the bank, past City Hall. Then out to the old chapel, abandoned since Dad's funeral. It used to be sacred ground. Now it looked like a meeting point. At 2:14 a.m., I slipped through the chapel's side door. No alarms, no motion sensors. I planted a directional mic beneath a pew and vanished into the night. The next night, I retrieved the device. And what I heard chilled me. Emma. The last shipments confirmed for the River Festival. No inspections, no eyes. Caney. Then we move. EMP goes live during the fireworks. Power grid crashes. Panic buys us 2 hours to disappear. Emma. And after that? Caney. We replicate. It was all there. The plan. The timeline. The execution. They were going to hit Willow Falls during the biggest event of the year. Thousands of people. Families. Press. And no one would see it coming. I needed more. I reviewed ATM surveillance near the church, hoping for a miracle. And that's when I saw him. A hooded figure entering the chapel at 1:43 a.m., head down, shoulders hunched, carrying the same case Emma had passed to Caney. I zoomed in, enhanced the image, stopped. It was Noah. His height, his gait, his hesitation. I wanted to believe it wasn't him. I really did. But there it was. Plain as day, I went home. He was in the kitchen, pouring cereal like it was just another night. I didn't wait. Why were you at the church? He looked up, bowl midair. What? I held up the photo. You had that case. What's in it? He paled. You're spying on me now. Emma gave it to you. Tell me what was inside. I don't know, he said. I swear I don't. She offered me a delivery job, cash, no questions. I thought I was helping with her charity thing. Mom's in debt. I didn't ask. Do you believe her? He didn't answer. Do you believe me? I asked, quieter now. At all? He looked away. You never trust anyone. That's your thing. You push everyone away and act surprised when nobody stands beside you. Then he left the room. I stood there, fists clenched, heart pounding. Dad used to say, family is the boat that never sinks. But right then, it felt like we were all drowning. And I didn't know who was coming back up. Reed's voice came over the secure line just before dawn. Tight, urgent. We've confirmed it. The EMP is on board the Hallworth yacht. It's set to activate during the River Festival tomorrow night. The density of people, the press coverage. It's a perfect storm. I didn't reply. I was already watching the yacht from a rooftop near the docks. It gleamed in the morning light. Pristine. Untouchable. Then came a second call. Hank, I answered. Static. Then coughing. Then screaming. And the roar of fire. By the time I reached the shop, it was almost gone. Flames had gutted the rear bay. The oil barrels exploded. Firefighters battled the blaze, but it was too late. Everything behind the office? Blackened. My truck? Hood scorched, paint warped. But the message? That was untouched. Carved into the hood with a hunting knife. Family is a weakness, Commander. Same message. Same signature. Caney. It was straight out of the playbook he'd used overseas. Destabilize. Divide. Break the spine before you even pull the trigger. They weren't trying to kill me. They were trying to unmake me. That night, I went back to Mom's. Told her everything. The plan, the target, the timing. You need to leave, I said. Tonight. You and Noah. I'll get you somewhere safe. I'm not going anywhere, she interrupted. Her voice wasn't angry. It was steady. If your father died trying to stop these people, I won't run and let them win. I stared at her. Do you believe me now? She looked at me. Really looked at me. I don't know, she said, but I want to. And for the first time, that was enough. I made one more call, a number I hadn't dialed since Aleppo. Sarah Vega. She didn't say hello, just, how bad? EMP, civilian target, local support compromised. She answered like a SEAL always does. I'll be there in 6 hours. At 2:51 a.m., she rolled up in a white van labeled Event Support. Inside? A handheld disruptor, 3 comm jammers, and smoke grenades packed in a crate of party lights. We went over the plan. We'd pose as AV crew for the festival, slip aboard the yacht during setup. I'd neutralize the EMP. She'd handle external security. Fast, quiet, no one panics. No noise, no guns, clean. But just as I started to believe it might work, Noah knocked on my door. He looked broken, pale, sweating. I heard her on the phone, he said. Emma. She was talking about using the river as some kind of signal line. I didn't understand it all, but it sounded real. He sat down, head in hands. I was so stupid. I just wanted to help with the bills. I didn't know. I swear to God, Logan, I didn't know. I knelt beside him, held his hands. I believe you, I whispered. He looked up, stunned. I don't deserve that. You're not the only one who's made mistakes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something folded. A photo, old. Dad standing on the docks, shaking hands with George Hallworth. But someone had circled Dad's face in red ink. Behind them, a shipping container. Same model I saw last week. Mom kept this hidden, Noah whispered. Dad knew. He knew everything. The sun was just starting to rise. The festival would begin in less than 12 hours. If we failed, Willow Falls wouldn't recover, and neither would we. The morning of the River Festival felt fake. The streets buzzed with life. Kids with cotton candy, booths selling handmade candles and chili dogs, Music from a high school band drifted across the water. Everything looked perfect. But underneath? Ticking time bomb. I moved through the crowd with my hat pulled low, headset in place, matching Sarah step for step. We wore navy polos marked Event Audio Visual, clipboards in hand, lanyards with fake crew badges. No one questioned us. The Hallworth yacht was docked closer than usual, shining under the sun like a stage set for royalty. A floating palace. We wheeled our equipment carts onto the deck. Inside the crates, comm jammers, signal interceptors, smoke units, and a handheld electromagnetic disruptor barely bigger than a lunchbox. Sarah peeled off toward the upper level, playing distraction. I headed for the engine room. The core had to be somewhere on board. It didn't take long. Below deck, beneath a false floor labeled medical supplies, I found it. A sealed case, military-grade titanium, power indicators blinking amber, still in standby. I popped the lid. EMP core. Live. Armed. The timer wasn't running yet, but it would be. And once it started, Willow Falls would go dark. No emergency services, no comms. Traffic dead. Panic instant. I moved to jam the disruptor in place. Then I heard the click. I turned, and there he was. Victor Caney, his weapon raised, smiling like we were old friends. Didn't think you'd show, he said. They told me you froze last time. He raised the barrel. Guess we'll find out. The shot cracked past my head as I dove behind stacked crates. Splinters flew. Funny thing about ghosts, I called out, crawling toward cover. They don't stay dead. Then Sarah burst in from the side corridor, gun drawn. She laid down covering fire, forcing Caney to retreat behind a bulkhead. She tossed me the disruptor unit. Go! She shouted. I sprinted back to the core and jammed the device into the override port. The lights on the EMP flickered. Then the screen changed. Secondary system active. 2-minute countdown initiated. Of course. Backup protocols. Redundancy. Emma had planned for this. I turned, and she was already there, standing in the doorway like she'd been waiting for her cue. Red dress, calm as ice, elegant as always. You have no idea what your father took from my family, she said. Her voice was quiet, personal. He ruined our future. He got the port expansion shut down. He made this town hate us. She stepped forward, lifting a tablet from her clutch. Now, I returned the favor. She pressed the screen. The failsafe activated. Another countdown. 2 minutes. No override visible. Sarah was fighting Caney, fists echoing off steel. I ran. I burst topside and ripped off my headset. No time to call for help. No time to think. I dove straight over the rail into the freezing river. The shock hit like a brick wall. But I pushed deeper, swimming beneath the hull until I reached the utility panel on the yacht's underbelly. Fingers numb, I pried at the seal. No tools, no leverage. Then I heard a shout from the pier. Logan! Noah. He stood on the dock, eyes wide. In his hand, something silver. He threw it. A wrench. The same one I used at Hank's shop. Worn, heavy, familiar. I caught it, breath held. Used it to force the last latch open. Inside, the master relay. I jammed the disruptor in with all my strength. The screen blinked. 007. Everything stopped. The lights on the deck flickered but stayed on. The music across the river kept playing. The world didn't end. Not today. By the time I climbed back onto the deck, soaked and shaking, Caney was on the ground. Blood from his nose. Sarah standing over him. Emma, gone. She'd escaped on a personal watercraft before anyone could react, vanishing into the trees like a ghost. But not before leaving one final message over the yacht's comm system. Her voice echoed across the river. Willow was just the beginning. I stood at the railing, dripping wet, watching the town celebrate as if nothing had happened. No one knew how close they'd come to disaster, and maybe that was the point. Heroes don't always get the headlines, but they do the job anyway. The next morning, Willow Falls looked the same, but felt completely different. The yacht, seized by federal authorities. Hallworth Freight's assets, frozen. Emma? Still missing. Warrants had been issued in 3 states, and the whispers had begun. Some said it was a systems glitch. Others said it was a failed terror plot. The sheriff said nothing. The silence was loud. That afternoon, I got called to a meeting. The location, the old church, the same one my dad used to volunteer at, now turned into a community center. Inside, it smelled like lemon oil and dust. Reed was already there. So was Sheriff Branning, and a few people I never thought I'd see sitting in the same pews. The town council. Reed wasted no time. He played a video on the projector, drone footage of Caney and Emma standing at another port miles down the coast. Emma, same route, same shipment, same timing. Caney, then we move. Red letters flashed across the screen. Willow Cross Alpha Test. Reed turned to the room. This wasn't an isolated incident. It's part of a coordinated campaign to destabilize infrastructure across the West Coast. The room went dead silent. I stood, and for the first time in years, I spoke without holding back. I stood in the church where my father once scrubbed floors and mended pews. Now I was standing under the same wooden beams, watching as a video played on a flickering projector. Emma Hallworth and Victor Caney, alive and unpunished, shaking hands at a port hundreds of miles away. Willow Cross Alpha Test. They had used my hometown as a dry run for something bigger, something that could take down cities, not just streetlights. This is part of a larger network, Reed said. What happened in Willow Falls was only the first domino. The next ports are already marked. The room was quiet, not from disbelief, but from shame. Some of the same people who once whispered that I was a disgrace, who stared when I walked into a diner, now sat speechless, watching the proof unfold in front of them. So I spoke. And this time, my voice didn't shake. I was dishonorably discharged from the Navy for punching a superior officer, I said, because he assaulted my bunkmate, and no one believed me. I looked around the room, at people I'd known my entire life. My record was sealed. But someone at the top knew the truth. That's why I was recruited into a Black Ops SEAL unit. That's how I served. That's how I lost friends. Kyle most of all. Because I hesitated once. I paused. Let that land. I didn't come back here to clear my name. I came back because silence already cost my father his life, and I wasn't going to let it take anyone else. At first, there was just silence. Then someone stood. My mother. She walked to my side and took my hand. I lost my husband because he stayed quiet, she said. I won't lose my daughter for the same reason. Her voice cracked, but she didn't falter. She fought, even when no one believed her. Now it's our turn. Then Noah stepped forward, quiet, steady. He didn't say anything. He just placed something in my hand. Dad's Navy ring. You finished what he started, he whispered. I closed my fingers around it, and for the first time in years, I belonged. That night, I returned to my apartment. The place where the shadows had once felt suffocating now felt light. In the mailbox, a cardboard package, no return address, no stamp. Inside, a USB stick. The holographic seal on it was unmistakable. SEAL Team 9. I inserted it into a clean laptop and waited. A video played. Grainy conference footage from 3 months ago. Emma Hallworth, smiling, entering a room, followed by a man in a tailored suit. Commander Ellis Wexler. He'd been one of my commanding officers, the kind who never got his hands dirty. The kind who made sure men like Caney had cover stories that no one dared question. Now he was here, shaking hands with the woman who tried to burn my town to the ground. On screen, a set of words blinked red. Willow Cross, Alpha Test. Then one more line. Thank you, Commander, from an old friend. Someone had sent this to me. Someone still out there, still fighting. This wasn't over. I drove to Harper Hill at sunrise. The town looked so peaceful below, wrapped in golden light. The river sparkled like it had never hidden anything dangerous beneath its calm surface. But I knew better now. The Caldwell, no, the Hallworth, yacht, was under federal seizure. Emma's assets were frozen. Her company shuttered. But she was still out there. Warrants had been issued, but she was smart. And she wouldn't stop. Mom launched a nonprofit the next week, the Charles Ray Foundation, named after my dad. Its mission? supporting veterans, and funding local investigations into infrastructure vulnerabilities in rural towns like Willow Falls. She gave a speech at the launch event. She hadn't spoken publicly in years, but that day, her voice was strong, clear, and everyone listened. Noah enrolled in a technical institute in Portland. I want to understand how systems work, he told me, so I can see when someone's trying to break them. I knew what he really meant. He didn't want to be used again. He wanted to build something that couldn't be weaponized. We had breakfast the day he left. Just coffee, eggs, silence. No apologies. None needed. Sometimes healing doesn't come with big words. Sometimes it just shows up and stays for the whole meal. Then I got an email from an old encrypted inbox I hadn't checked in 3 years. The subject line? Coordinates. Inside was a satellite map. 7 port cities marked in red, each with a date, a name, a time. It was a hit list. And Willow Falls had been the first. Reed met me at the regional airstrip. Sarah was already there, gear packed, jacket zipped, ready to move. She saw me and without saying a word, nodded. That was how SEALs said I'm in. I wore my uniform for the first time in years. Not because I needed to, because I chose to. Dad's ring rested on my hand. It didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like purpose. We boarded the transport chopper. The rotors spun up. I sat down, pulled out my field notes, and found something tucked into the inside of my jacket. A folded piece of paper. Nathan's handwriting. No matter where you go, I'm still your little brother. I held it to my chest, right over the SEAL emblem, right where it belonged. As the ground fell away beneath us, I whispered the truth I'd spent my life trying to believe. I am not the failure they said I was. I am Commander Logan Ray, and my mission has only just begun. Final message to the audience. Sometimes the loudest battles are fought in silence, not on battlefields, but inside us. Sometimes what breaks us teaches us how to rise. Not for applause, not for revenge, but to protect what still matters. If this story moved you, drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Let me know what part hit home. And if you believe in second chances, or the power of choosing your own mission, hit that subscribe button. Thank you for listening. And remember, the mission isn't over. Not yet.